Tonight in our ongoing series, The End of Privacy, more proof that the line between personal and public gets a bit more blurry every day in the digital age. First, there's Facebook, promising to change its settings once again after some users found out they couldn't hide their friends list anymore under new privacy settings that were rolled out just last week. And then there's the U.S. Supreme Court deciding to rule for the first time on whether employers are allowed to read text messages sent on company cell phones. So a lot to talk about tonight. And joining me right now, CNN senior legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin and technology TV host Katie Linendoll from A&E's We Mean Business. Jeff, I think we've all sent text messages that maybe we didn't want our boss to see. Are we really going to have to give up that info?
Well, you know what? You might want to go to a commercial because there's no good news here. This is the rule. Let's talk about the Supreme Court case. The Ontario Police Department outside Los Angeles, they had a policy where you had a pager and you could send some personal text messages and you had to pay for them after a certain amount. So it was sort of a mix of private and employer use on these pagers.
So, but they clearly said it's okay to send some personal messages.
Correct.
Right.
The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said, well, in that case, you do, as a employee, have a right to privacy in the ones that you are permitted to send.
Right.
That's unlikely to survive in the Supreme Court.
Why?
Because
really?
The Supreme Court and all courts have been very strict on this. Here's your very excellent 2003 model that you get from CNN. That is, even if you send, like Gmails, if you have your own private Gmail account, if you use that hardware, CNN can see it. If you use your Turner account,
I'm
CNN can see it. No, I mean, the law is terrible for individuals. You get a BlackBerry. If you send messages on that, CNN can see it. Now, they don't often look, but under the legal regime now in effect, you have virtually no privacy rights in any machine that is given to you by your employer.
So this doesn't change that much between, like, say, this was a government, police department in California versus, say, a private company. It's kind of the same rules generally apply.
The rules for the government tend to be even more pro-employer, but by and large they're the same. And look, people get fired. People get fired from this company all the time for doing things on their email that they didn't want our employer to see, and they see them. But we all do it.
But and then finally, I know you sort of suggested this, that in all likelihood, I know I'm asking you to predict here, that the Supreme Court is not going to favor privacy. They're more likely to favor the law as it stands?
The courts are really waiting for the legislatures to step in here because, every time we log in, that sort of boilerplate at the bottom that none of us read, all of that always says, this is the property of CNN, it's not your property, and the courts have enforced that. It's going to take state legislatures really to get involved and recognize reality that all of us. Now, CNN cannot tap your phone. Phones are different.
Comforting.
That's comforting. Well, that's different. But it's starting to be. So this court recognized that email is starting to be more like a phone call, but it's going to take state legislatures to step in and recognize
start
that.
making laws.
Yes.
Let me bring up the Facebook stuff with Katie, and there's a lot of controversy now about Facebook's privacy policy. For those of us who haven't been completely following, let's explain it. Lay it out for us.
So basically how it works is Facebook now, if you sign on or if you've signed on already, they're going to update you with a privacy tool. You can keep your old settings or you can move on to new settings. And what they're trying to do is push the 350 million users in the community to make more of their data available. That is great for advertising and dirt cheap advertising for Facebook. It's brilliant. They have mass appeal, and now they're capitalizing on it. But what's scary is privacy. But when you're putting your stuff out onto the web, it's putting it out into the world. So forget Facebook, forget MySpace, forget Twitter. Anytime you're putting your stuff out there, you gotta think twice. Internet privacy is non-existent. It's an oxymoron.
So I mean, completely non-existent? That was going to be my next question. What do we do to protect ourselves? If you still want to be on Facebook, you want to have, you know, your small, select group of friends, is there a way to protect yourself, or you just have to give this up?
It's incredibly tough these days. And, you know, I tell people, you got to rethink. If you have to think twice about putting something on Facebook, whether it's a photo, whether it's a status update, don't do it. I think a lot of people get into the mash where they just upload a photo. Next thing you know, they lose their job or their employer's worried about what they sent on the web. It's scary. We're living in a different age. We're living in a digital age. It's a lot easier to get in trouble. And that's why with these Facebook privacy concerns, now not just friends or friends of friends, they're pushing you to share your content with everyone. 350 million users in a community, not the best place to publish.
Are we, same thing here, are you going to see legislatures trying to catch up with what's happening technologically?
Well, if voters start to care about this stuff, I mean, the problem is, I think most of us sort of throw up our hands and say, you know, it's all too overwhelming and we don't really write our state legislatures about privacy. But, you know, this is how we live our lives. We live our lives through these machines. We don't use the phone nearly as much as we used to, and the law has not really caught up. I mean, you know, we still do have a good deal of privacy in phone calls. It takes a lot for the government to tap a phone line, or even your employer can't just listen to all your phone calls. But this is how we live, but the law has not caught up to that.
But there are changes taking place, because I know you have to pick your Facebook friends rather carefully now. In Florida, an ethics group just decided that judges can't have some lawyers as friends, I read.
It's very tricky, but you have to think about the fundamentals here. Facebook is not your friend, no pun intended. They are a business. They have a business model, and their end goal is to create revenue. So ultimately, we knew that at some point, Facebook needed to capitalize, and that's exactly what's happening. It goes back to the basics of just protecting yourself and being smarter about the content that you put on the web.
So interesting. All right, a lot to learn here. Katie Linendoll, thank you, Katie.
Something else to worry about. Isn't that
like we don't have enough.
Campbell. Accept it.
Oh, yeah.